Welcome.
Wednesday's Night Out.
Night's Digest. Getting Things Done. The Art of Stress-Free Productivity from the New York Times best-selling author David Allen. Joseph. Tuesday, April 14, 2026, 092610. Part 1. The Art of Getting Things Done. 1. A new practice for a new reality. There is one thing we can do, and the happiest ability we can be completely present. We can be all here. We can give our attention to the opportunity before us. Mark Van Buren. Trying becomes striving, and striving endows itself. Your ability to generate power is directly proportioned as to your ability to relax. Anything that does not belong where it is, the way it is, an open loop, which will be pulling on your attention if it's not appropriately managed. Managing commitments well requires the implementation of some basic activities and behaviors. Vision is not enough. It must be combined with venture. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We must step up the stairs. Vaclav Havel. Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, 223318. Part 1. The Art of Getting Things Done. 2. Getting control of your life. The 5 steps of mastering workflow. Getting things under control, whether in your kitchen or in your company, will incorporate them. 27, para 1. A useful definition of liberty is obtained only by seeking the principle of liberty in the main business of human life. That is to say, in the process by which men educate their responses and learn to control their environment. Walker Lippmann. 5 steps: capture, clarify, organize, reflect. Engage. If you're still trying to keep track of too many things in your mental space, you likely won't be motivated to use and empty your in-tray with integrity. Implementing standard tools and procedures for capturing ideas and input will become more and more critical as your life and work become more sophisticated. Page 34, paragraph 3. I define a project as any desired result that can be accomplished within a year that requires more than one action step. You need well-organized, discrete systems to handle things that require no action as well as those that do. Page 45, paragraph 8. If you set up a personal organization system structured as I recommended with a project list, a calendar, next actions list, and a wanting for list, not much will be required to maintain that system. Page 49, paragraph 7. The basic purpose of this workflow management process is to facilitate good choices about what you're doing at any point in time. Wednesday, April 15, 2026, 214810. Part 1. The Art of Getting Things Done. Chapter 3. Getting projects creatively underway. The 5 phases of planning. The key ingredient of relaxed control are 1. Clearly defined outcomes, projects, and the next actions required to move them forward. Closure. And second, reminders placed in a trusted system that is refueled regularly. This is what I call horizontal focus. Although it may seem simple, the actual application of the process can create profound results. You're already familiar with the most brilliant and creative planner in the world, your brain. Your mind goes through 5 steps to accomplish virtually any task. First, defining purpose and principles. Second, outcome, visioning. Third, brainstorming. Fourth, organizing. Fifth, identifying next action. If you're wanting to have a good idea before you have any idea, you won't have any action. Work harder. Over time, more people get busier. Nothing is more dangerous than an idea when it is the only one you have. Monday, April 20, 2026, 224831. Part 2. Practicing stress-free productivity. Chapter 4. Getting started, setting up the time, space, and tools. In Part 2, we'll move from a conceptive framework and limited application of workflow mastery to full-scale implementation and best practices. Going through this program often gives people a level of relaxed control they may never have experienced before, but it usually required the catalyst of step-by-step procedures to get there. To that end, I'll provide a logical sequence of things to do to make it as easy as possible for you to get on board and given the most value from these techniques. Much of the detail in the section can easily seem more than you can digest or implement on your first read. It's included to provide a blow-by-blow instruction manual for you if you've decided to do a full-scale implementation of the model, which could take at least 2 full uninterrupted days to implement. First is information and suggestions you will very likely want to revisit at some point to glean a new level of application. As you get started down the GTD path, what's this in front of the door? That's right. I've got to take this one with me. Don't be afraid to take a big step if one is indicated. You can't cross a chasm in 2 small jumps. David L. George. Interruptions can double the time it takes to get through anything. One of the best things for enhancing your productivity is having organizing tools you love to use. Tuesday, April 28, 2026, 212520. Part 2. Practicing stress-free productivity. 5. Capturing caroling your stuff. In Chapter 2, I described the basic procedures for capturing your potential work and meaningful input. This chapter will lead you in more detail through the process of getting all your stuff into one place and to end. That's the critical first step in getting to the state of mind like water. Just gathering a few more things than you currently have will change your experience dramatically and give you an important new reference point for being on top of your work and your world. When I coach a client through this process, the capture phase usually takes between 1 and 6 hours. Though it did take an entire 20 hours with one personal finally, I told him, you get the idea. It can take longer than you think if you are committed to a full-blown collection that will include everything at work and everywhere else. That means going through every storage area, including your computers and your nook and cranny in every location, including cars, boats, and other garages and homes, if you have them. Be assured that if you give yourself at least a couple of hours to tackle this part, you can grab the major portion of things outstanding, and you can even capture the rest by creating relevant place-holding notes. For example, purge and process boat storage shed and deal with hall closet. In the real world, you probably won't be able to keep your stuff 100% collected all the time. If you're like most people, you'll move too fast and be engaged. You'll move too fast and be engaged in too many things during the course of a week to get all your ideal and commitments captured outside your head. But it should become an ideal standard that keeps you motivated to consistently clean house of all the things about your work and life that have your attention. Until you captured everything that has your attention, some part of you will still not totally trust that you're working with the whole picture of your world. Thursday, April 30th, 2026, 222849. Part 2, Practicing Stress-Free Productivity. Chapter 6, Clarifying, Getting into Empty. Assuming that you have collected everything that has your attention, your job now is to actually get to the bottom game. Getting into empty doesn't mean actually doing all the actions and projects that you've captured. It just means identifying each item and deciding what it is, what it means, and what you're going to do with it. To get an overview of this process, you may find it useful here to refer to the workflow diagram on page 123. The center column illustrates all the steps involved in processing and deciding your next actions. This chapter focuses on the components in the diagram center column, the steps from in to next action. You'll immediately see the natural organization that results from following this process for each of your open loops. For instance, if you pick up something from in and realize, I've got to call Andrea about that, but I've got to do it on Monday when she's in her office. Then you'll defer that action immediately and enter it on your calendar for wonder. I recommend that you read through this chapter and the next one on organizing your actions before you actually get started. You actually start processing what you've captured, and it may take you some steps. When I coach people through this process, it invariably becomes a dance back and forth between the simple decision making stage of processing the open loops and the trickier task of figuring out the best way to enter these decisions in their particular organization system. Many of the people we work with, for example, are eager to get set up on a node device that might synchronize with the enterprise application that their company is using for email and scheduling. The first thing we would have to do is, after we've collected the in tray, is make sure all their hardware and software are working. Then we clean up, print out, and erase usually everything they have previously tried to organize in their task list and put it all into N. Then we establish some working categories such as calls, errands, agendas, and computer, and so on. As we begin to process the N tray, the person can go immediately to his computer and type his action steps directly into the system he will ultimately depend on. If you're not sure yet what you're going to be using as a personal reminder system, don't worry. You can begin very appropriately with a simple loose leaf note, book, or whatever you may be currently using for making lists. You can always upgrade your tools later once you have your system in place. Processing guidelines. The best way to learn this model is by doing, but there are a few basic rules to follow. Process the top item first. Process one item at a time. Never put anything back into N. A better admonition would be, the first time you pick something up from your N tray, decide what to do about it and where it goes. Never put it back in N. You just need to trust your intuition and be realistic about your space. Monday, May 11th, 2026, 132903. Part 2, Practicing a Stress-Free Productivity. Chapter 7, Organizing, Setting Up the Right Buckets. Having a total and seamless system of organization in place gives you tremendous power because it allows your mind to let go of lower level thinking and graduate to intuitive focusing, undistracted by matters that haven't been dealt with appropriately. But your physical organization system must be better than your mental one in order for that to happen. Being organized means nothing more or less than where something is matched with it means to you. If you decide you want to keep something as reference and you put it where your reference materials need to be, that's organized. If you think you need a reminder about a call you need to make, as long as you put that reminder where you want reminders of phone calls to make, you're organized. As simple as that sounds, it begs a very big question. What does something mean to you? It turns out that much of what people are trying to organize has not been clarified as per the previous chapter. And even once it has, there are more refined distinctions that are possible, which will add greater creativity and control for you. I will expand on some of those in this chapter as I'll lead you through the organizing steps and tools that will be required as you process your in tray. As you initially process in, you'll create lists and groupings of things you want to organize, and you'll invariably think of additional items to include. In other words, your organization system is not something that you will necessarily create all at once in a vacuum. It will evolve as you process your stuff and test out whether you have put everything in the best place for you. It should and will evolve as you do. The core distinctions of what things mean to you will be true forever. But the best structure for you to manage when a year from now might look different than what you come up with dealing with your world today. The outer ring of the workflow diagram opposite shows the main groupings into which things will go as you decide what they are and what needs to be done about them. The basic categories and projects list. The basic categories: a projects list, project support materials, calendar actions and information, next actions list, and waiting for list, reference material, a someday maybe list. The most common categories of action reminders caused at computers. Often at office miscellaneous. At home anywhere agendas for people and meetings. Review. Where to look for projects still to uncover. Current activities, higher horizon interests and commitments, current problems, issues, and opportunities. The variety of reference systems, general reference, filing paper, email, and simple digital storage, large category filing, context managers, libraries, and archives. Someday maybes are not throwaway items. They may be some of the most interesting and creative things you'll ever get involved with. Tuesday, May 19, 2026, 102855. Part 2, A Stress-Free Productivity, Chapter 8, Reflecting, Keeping It All Fresh and Functional. The purpose of this whole method of workflow management is not to let your brain become lax, but rather to enable it to be free to experience more elegant, productive, and creative activity. In order to earn that freedom, however, your brain must engage on some consistent basis with all your commitments and activities. You must be assured that you're doing what you need to be doing, and that it's okay to be not doing what you're not doing. That facilitates the condition of being present, which is always the optimal state from which to operate. Reviewing your system on a regular basis, reflecting on that contents, and keeping it current and functional are prerequisites for that kind of clarity and stability. If you have a list of calls you must make, for example, the minute that list is not totally current with all the calls you need to make, your brain will not trust the system and it won't get relief from its power level mental task. It will have to take back the job of remembering, processing, and reminding, which, as you should know by now, it doesn't do very effectively. All of this means your system cannot be state. In order to support appropriate action choices, it must be kept up to date, and it should trigger consistent and appropriate evaluation of your life and work at several horizons. There are two major issues that need to be handled at this point. What do you look at in all this and when? What do you need to do and how often to ensure that all of it works as a consistent system, freeing you to think and manage at a higher level? A SEAL review process will lead to enhanced and proactive new thinking in key areas of your life and work. Such thinking emerges from both focus, concentration, and serendipitous brainstorming, which will be triggered and galvanized by a consistent personal review of your inventory of actions and projects. A few seconds a day is usually all you need for review, as long as you're looking at a sufficient amount of the right things at the right time. Thursday, May 21st, 2026, 102719. Part 2, A Stress-Free Productivity. Chapter 9, Engaging, Making the Best Action Choices. When it comes to your real-time plow through get it done workday, how do you decide what to do at any given point? As I've said, my simple answer is trust your heart or your spirit. Or if you're allergic to those kinds of words, try these: your gut, the seat of your pants, your liver, your intuition. Whatever works for you as a reference point to get that has you step back and assess whatever you consider the source of your inner wisdom. If you've ever made thoughtful versus knee-jerk and real-time choices, you'll know what I mean. That doesn't mean you throw your life to the winds, unless, of course, it does. I actually went down that route myself with a vengeance at one point on my life, and I can attest that the lessons were valuable, if not necessarily necessary. As outlined in Chapter 2, pages 52 through 57, I have found 3 priority frameworks to be enormously helpful in the context of deciding actions. The 4 criteria model for choosing actions in the moment, the threefold modes for evaluating daily work, the 6-level model for reviewing your own work. These happen to be shown in reverse hierarchical order, that is the reverse of the typical strategic top-down perspective. In keeping with the nature of the getting things done methodology, I have found it useful to once again work from the bottom up, meaning I'll start with the most mundane levels. To ignore the unexpected, even if it were possible, would be to live without opportunity, spontaneity, and the rich moments of which life is made. Stephen Covey. Your work is to discover your work and then, with all your heart, to give yourself to it. Dalila. The best place to succeed is where you are with what you have. Charles Schwab. If you're not totally sure what your job is, it will always feel overwhelming. Thursday, May 21st, 2026, 182059. Part 2, A Stress-Free Productivity, Chapter 10, Getting Projects Under Control, Chapter 4 through 9 have given you all the tricks and methods you need to clear your head and make intuitive choices about what to do when that's the horizon no level. What needs your attention and action across the horizontal landscape of your life? The last piece of the puzzle is the vertical level, the digging deep and pie in the sky thinking that can leverage your creative brain power. You may indeed have clarified outcomes and next action steps for the various projects and situations in which you're involved. But there are times when you will feel called to enhance your relationship with some of them with more creative thinking and detailed how-to development. That gets us back to refining and energizing our project planning. You need to set up systems and tricks that get you to think about your projects and situations more frequently, more easily, and more in depth. The handwritten trails offer trails after often contain rich context memory jogs that prove valuable later on. Let our advanced worrying become our advanced thinking and planning. Tuesday, May 26, 2026, 085424. Part 3, The Power of the Key Principle. Chapter 11, The Power of the Capturing Habit. There's much more to these simple techniques and models than may appear at first glance. Indeed, they offer a systematic method to keep your mind distraction free, ensuring a high level of efficiency and effectiveness in your work. That in itself would be sufficient reason to implement these practices. But there are even greater implications for the fundamental principles at work here. What follows if the next 3 chapters is an accounting of my experience over the next 30 years of the subtler and often more profound effects that can transpire from the implementation of these basic principles? The longer term results can have a significant impact on you as an individual, and they can positively affect larger organizational cultures as well. When people with whom you interact notice that without fail you receive, process, and organize in an airtight manner the exchanges and agreements they have with you, they begin to trust you in a unique way. More significantly, you incorporate a level of self-confidence in your engagement with your world that money cannot buy. Such is the power of capturing placeholders for anything that is incomplete or unprocessed in your life. It noticeably enhances your mental well-being and improves the quality of your communications and relationships, both personally and professionally. And when organizations expect and reinforce this best practice of allowing nothing to fall through a communications crack, with everyone accountable for resulting actions and commitments clarified and tracked by the appropriate persons, it can significantly increase a culture's productivity and reduces stress. Organizations must create a culture in which it is acceptable that everyone has more to do than he or she can do, and in which it is sage to renegotiate agreements about what everyone is not doing. Tuesday, May 26, 2026, 121633. Thursday, May 28, 2026, 099110. Part 3, The Power of the Key Principle. Chapter 12, The Power of the Next Action Decision. I have a personal passion to make what's the next action part of our global thought process. I envision a world in which no meeting or discussion will end and no interaction cease without a clear indication of whether or not some action is needed, and if it is, what it will be, or at least who has accountability for it. I envision organizations adopting a standard that anything that lands in anyone's field of awareness will be evaluated for action required and the resulting decision managed appropriately. Imagine the freedom that you'll provide for people and organizations to focus their attention on bigger issues and opportunities. Over the years, I have noticed an extraordinary shift in energy and productivity whenever individuals and groups installed what's the next action as a fundamental and consistently asked questions as simple as the query seems. It is still somewhat rare to find it fully operational where it needs to be. One of the greatest challenges you may encounter is that once you have gotten used to what's the next action for yourself and those around you, interacting with people who aren't asking it can be highly frustrating. It clarifies things so quickly that dealing with people and environments that don't use it can seem nightmarish. We are all accountable for defining what, if anything, we are committed to make happen as we engage with others and ourselves. And at some point, for any outcome that we have an internal commitment to complete, we must make the decision about the next physical action required. There's a great difference, however, between making that decision when things show up and doing it when they blow up. How could something be so simple be so powerful? What's the next action? The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks and then starting on the first one. Mark Twain. No matter how big and tough a problem may be, get rid of confusion by taking one little step toward solution. Do something. George F. Nordenbolt. Friday, May 29, 2026, 095250. Part 3, The Power of the Key Principles. Chapter 13, The Power of Outcome Focusing. The power of directing our mental and imaginative processes to create change has been studied and promoted in thousands of contexts from early positive thinking, but books to recent discoveries in advanced neuropsychology, physiology. My own interest has been in applying the principle in terms of practical reality. Does it help get things done? And if so, how do we best utilize it in managing the work of our lives? Oh, can we really use this information in ways that allow us to produce what we want to have happen with less effort? The answer was born a resounding yes. Defining specific projects and next actions that address real quality of life issues is productivity at its best. We are constantly creating and fulfilling things that have your attention, need your attention engaged. Friday, May 29, 2026, 105410. Part 3, The Power of the Key Principle. Chapter 14, GTD and Cognitive Science. Since the first edition of Getting Things Done was published, significant research in the field of social and cognitive psychology has documented and validated the efficiency of the principles that underlie the methodology. Until recently, these practices could be confirmed only experientially and anecdotally. Anyone who had ever applied the GTD techniques of capturing, clarifying, organizing, and reflecting on the resulting inventory acknowledged the same results: greater clarity, control, and focus, along with and the resulting personal and organizational benefits associated with what experience. If you have to any degree begun to implement the practices I have put forward so far, you will no doubt have noticed some positive increase in your own demeanor. Rigorous studies compiled by experts in the field of cognitive science, ranging from personal to organizational aspects, have begun to provide data that gives foundational support to this methodology and why and how its improvements are produced. In some sense, this may seem like someone's proving that gravity exists after we've all been experiencing it and dealing with it since we were conscious. But from another perspective, it gives perhaps needed credence to the advice for mastering workflow I've put forward here, and to why such seemingly simple processes and behaviors described in Getting Things Done have such a compelling result. The supporting research has emerged within several frameworks and categories: positive psychology, distributed cognition, the value of an external mind, relieving the cognitive load of incompletions, flow theory, self-leadership theory, goal striving via implementation, intention, psychological capital, PSYCAP, PSYCAP, your mind is for having ideas. Friday, May 29, 2026, 122455. Part 3, The Power of the Key Principle. Chapter 15, This Path of GTD Mastery. GTD is actually a lifelong practice with multiple levels of mastery. It is very similar to Playing an instrument like the violin, a sport like tennis, or a game like chess. It's like mathematics, pottery, art, history, or even parenting. All of these endeavors involve learning and applying a particular set of moves and techniques, and there's no end to how good you can become at them, or how many subtleties where are to explore. GTD is the art of dealing with the stream of life's work and engagement, which itself is constantly evolving for all of us at any age or station. It's about identifying and navigating your commitments and interests from a state of confidence and flow. Your work and focus will change, often dramatically over time, but engaging with all of it masterfully is a defined practice that can be learned and refined over a lifetime. Mastery does not refer to some final end state of a Zen like peacefulness and enlightenment on a mountaintop, though that could be an optional, nice expression of it. Rather, it's the demonstrated ability to consistently engage in productive behaviors as a means to achieve clarity, stability, and focus when it's desired or required, no matter what the shallot. How well you have developed with ability, how well you have developed what ability will be tested when you're confronted with things that are unclear, unstable, and distracting, which are natural and normal symptoms of any change in your world. The idea of mind like water doesn't assume that water is always undisturbed. On the contrary, water engages appropriately with disturbance instead of fighting against it. Over the course of life, such disturbances can range from dealing with your homework in the sixth grade to the demands of your new job to the vague sense of uneasiness about what to do when you retire. GTD mastery involves learning and incorporating its various best practices and then integrating them in a holistic manner, which results in a much more dynamic experience than simply the sum of its parts. When you learn to play tennis, you focus on specific components of its moves, like the backhand, the forehand, the lob, and the serve. When you actually play a game of tennis, you then put them all together. As you increase your mastery, your focus matures to encompass an overall strategy. Similarly, mastering GTD involves an initial mastery of its segments, techniques, and tools, and then incorporating them as you play your whole life and work game. Your expertise will be reflected in your using an optimally integrated system and approach without thinking about it. Over the many years of engaging with people who have adopted the GTD methodology, I have noticed generally three stages of maturity they have demonstrated in using the mode: employing the fundamentals of managing workflow, implementing a more elevated and integrated total life management system, and leveraging skills to create clear space and get things done for an ever expensive expression and manifestation. Wouldn't it be great not to have to think too hard about what's present in the moment? Friday, May 29, 2026, 143607. Conclusion. I hope this book has been useful, that you have started to reap the rewards of getting more done with less effort and stress. Joseph Speaks. This book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, is a great book, definitely following Awaken the Giant Within, Arthur Anthony Tony Robbins. These two books share keywords, and in my opinion, if you're going to awaken the giant within, it's time to get organized with getting things done. Takes an in-depth look into, while giving step-by-step layouts that can put you in the driving lane. Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, from the New York Times best-selling author David Allen. Turnpike Plaza, 365, Rec Squad.